northern part of the country and aren't worth a darn for this area. If you want a good book, this is the book you want for this area. The second book that I'll recommend that all gardeners should have on their shelf is called the Texas Bug Book. I don't think the guys put one of those out. But it's also by Howard Garrett and Malcolm Beck, subtitled The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it is just a great book to tell you which are the good guys and which are the bad guys, and just a lot of little stories and things mixed in along with it. But those are two good things to ask for the next holiday: Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, whatever comes along, anniversaries, whatever.
Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday. That's good. That's a good reason. Okay, cucumbers and peppers and things. Okra. Okra is easy to grow, but okra takes a lot of room. So, and it is a real hot weather plant. Don't plant your okra until we really get into warm weather. Thanks for coming. There's red okra, there is green okra. Again, like squash and cucumbers and things, it is not a contest to see who can grow the biggest okra pod or the biggest squash. And if you, I mean literally, you will have to pick every day. And I guess I'm kind of combining squash and okra here. The squash that's this long today will be this long tomorrow. The okra that's this long today and really tasty will be this long and tough tomorrow. And even if you miss a day or two of picking, and you've got these overgrown fruits out there, pick them off and do something with them. I throw them over the fence and let the cows eat them. Thank you guys. But if you leave them on there for a longer period of time, I mean, what's the purpose of producing fruit? It's not to please us, just like flowers aren't to please us. It's all about making seed. And if the plant chemically senses, man, I've got a nice big okra, a nice big squash, whatever on there, I'm going to be able to make plenty of seed, it's going to stop producing any more. So you keep these things producing by picking them off. And if you accidentally, again, this is your neighbor's problem, not yours, I'm sure, but I guess in that case I'm your neighbor, because some days, if I get home late on Fridays and I leave at 3 o'clock on Saturday to come into town, I don't always get everything picked, and sometimes by Saturday night things have gotten overgrown. Pick them off and throw them over the fence. There'll be more there tomorrow. Questions about okra? Fire ants do like okra. You will want to control your fire plants if fire ants if you have okra. Other things, we're just right toward the end of the growing season, or the planting season, I should say, for some things. Broccoli, great time to be planting broccoli. I planted some Thursday. I'm picking broccoli off what I planted 3 months ago, but go ahead and plant some more. As we get later into the spring, those heads are going to develop very quickly. And the time between making a nice tight head of broccoli and having a bunch of yellow flowers is pretty short, a period of 2 or 3 days. So go out every day, you know, and cut and harvest your broccoli. Broccoli will make a beautiful big head, and even after you harvest that, leave the plants alone, because they make more and more and more little side heads. Again, I'll tell you a personal story. I didn't grow it for years because I shared the garden with an elderly uncle who used to always tell me, don't bother planting broccoli, it won't grow here. His name was Heine, German for Henry, and I got to thinking, I think I could grow broccoli, I'm going to try. I grew broccoli that the heads were as big as this, and I went in and said, Heine, why did you tell me broccoli wouldn't grow here? And he said, because I don't like it. The funny thing was, once he tried my broccoli grown in our own garden, he found out he liked broccoli after all. But broccoli grows extremely well. Plant some in the fall. Planting in the fall is a gamble. And if you think that you're going to if you think everything you plant is going to do really well for you, you still believe in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and other things. It's not going to happen. And it doesn't mean you're a failure if one or more of your crops doesn't do well. My fall planted broccoli is now producing very well for me. My cauliflower didn't do worth a damn this year. I pulled it up and thrown it away because I didn't get a decent head out of it. But you can plant more cauliflower right now if you wanted to. Years past, I've had heads of cauliflower, you know, yay big. Let me tell you one thing about cauliflower too, even though it is getting a little bit late for it. If you grow cauliflower, it makes big old leaves. Before the little cauliflower heads start to form, take the 4 or 5 top leaves and pull them up over the top of the plant and put a rubber band or something around them. Cauliflower sunburns. And I mean, it only takes 1 day of bright sun. That beautiful white cauliflower will be brown and ugly looking. It still tastes good, but you know, you're not going to want to eat it because it doesn't look like cauliflower is supposed to. Cauliflower is very, very sensitive to sunburn. Pull those leaves up and make an umbrella over the top of it. Now broccoli, as I told you, if you plant the right variety, you'll be harvesting those little side shoots for a long, long time. Cauliflower, once it's made its one big head, that's it. Once you cut the head out of it, you might as well pull it up and throw it in the compost pile. Always have an idea of how long it's going to take things to produce. And I'm going to back up to squash for just a minute. There are what we call summer squashes. Thank you for coming. They're what we call summer squashes and what we call winter squashes. Winter squash does not grow in the winter. Summer squash produces very, very quickly. Thank you guys. 40 to 50 days you'll start getting production from your summer squash. Winter squash takes 150 to 180 days to produce. We plant summer squash and winter squash at the same time in the spring. We start harvesting our summer squash, you know, a couple of months later. The winter squash, it's going to be the end of the summer or into the fall before it starts producing. Up north, where they have a shorter growing season, they would harvest the summer squash in the summer, and the winter squash wouldn't be ready till autumn. And that's, you know, winter squash are things like spaghetti squash, turban squash, Hubbard squash, butternut squash, spaghetti squash, what am I missing, acorn squash. Those are winter squashes. And the only difference in those and the summer squash is that it takes a lot longer for them to grow. Again, know how long it takes things to produce. Little plants of broccoli and Brussels sprouts look a lot alike. But with broccoli, you're going to be harvesting good heads of broccoli about 6 to 10 weeks later. Brussels sprouts, it's going to take 20 weeks or so. If we plant broccoli and Brussels sprouts at the same time in September, we'll be harvesting broccoli November and December. The Brussels sprouts won't be producing until the following March or April. So we never plant Brussels sprouts in the spring. They don't have time to produce before it gets hot. That's why I tell you it's important to know what the right season is to plant all these different things.
Onions?
Onions, what do you call these? You call these onion sets? If you do, you're wrong. These are onion plants. People sometimes refer to these as sets, but they are not. The sets are little bulbs that have been interrupted in growth, and I've never grown a decent crop of onions from sets in this area. But I do grow very, very good onions from these. And these things can be planted anytime from about November on. We're right toward the end of the planting season for onions. So if you're going to plant onions, do it within the next couple of weeks. But the way that I plant onions from these little plants, by the way, if you're going to plant them from seed, you have to do it in the fall. Don't try to grow them from seed in the spring. You can grow them from seed in the fall as well as from plants. That big old yellow onion, what they call the Texas Super Sweet, they call the 1015. Everybody know why it's called 1015? October 15th is the date you're supposed to plant the seeds. Ladies don't have much imagination. Anyway, the way that I plant these plants, and remember each plant is going to theoretically produce a good size onion bulb on it. But I still go ahead and plant the plants close together. When I'm planting these things out, and I plant 500 or 600 onions every year, that's 5 or 6 bunches. But I'll plant them about 1 inch apart in the garden. And I'll go back 6 weeks later and I'll pull out every other plant. I don't know about you, but I love grilled onions. You know, little thin, there's just so many good things you can do. So I'm pulling out every onion and having it to enjoy. About 6 weeks later, I'll go back and I'll pull out every other onion. They're wonderful little onions, about this big around. It's usually about the time my potatoes are ready, and that's the next thing I'm going to talk about. Man, boil up some new potatoes and little onions like that, it just doesn't get any better than that. But that means that by the time summer comes around, when they're going to make the big onions, they're about that far apart instead of 1 inch apart, but I've enjoyed 2 harvests in the meantime. So that's how I plant the onions. Now, some of the onions in your garden will decide that they want to make flowers. Yeah. They'll come up and they'll have the tall leaves, and then they'll have a head of flowers on top. And by the way, don't always look for the biggest plants. The biggest plants to me are the ones that most often tend to flower. The smaller plants rarely ever flower. Nothing wrong with the flowers, but an onion that has flowered will not keep. That's right. To taste it, you won't know the difference in the taste of that one and the one next to it that decided not to put on flowers. The ones that haven't flowered, keep them in a cool, dry place. They'll store for 6 months or longer. You let them make flowers, you better eat them because they'll keep for 4 to 6 weeks and then they're going to rot on you. So just keep an eye out. When you pull them, if it's got flowers on it, you know, eat it immediately. If it doesn't have flowers, you can save it for some period of time. Just 1 second. You can harvest them anytime. Typically the bulb will be at its maximum size in early summer when the top starts to die and fall over. That's the ideal time to harvest if you're going to store them. Other thing to keep in mind, keep the foliage on your onions as healthy as possible. You may see a little worm get on them periodically if you let them get too dry.